Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
Hi, and welcome to this week's You've Got This. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today I'm going to answer listener questions about the teen years. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about how we parent during those teen years. There are seasons to parenting, and I do have a podcast on this, so I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit trail. But when our kids get the teen years, especially the older teen years, I'm talking high school and early college, we really need, as parents, to move from that tight grip on them, that monitoring, that very close monitoring, that discipline and discipling them that we did from 3 to 13 years old. We really need to move into that mentor position. Now, this is hard. This is hard because the stakes are higher. They're higher in high school. You flunk out of a class in high school, and that's on your permanent transcript record. But, this is a big but, we also need to let them make those mistakes while we are still there to help them pick up the pieces. This doesn't mean that we are always cracking down on them. This means that we step back and we let some of the natural consequences happen. We guide them, we direct them, but remember, the parent does not produce the child produces the parent. And nowhere is this more obvious than when a child is a teenager. It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. We can show our teens, and even all our children, but we can show our teens especially the right path, but we cannot make them take it. And that leads me to the first question this week. This is about a mom. She's a Christian mom, and she has a 17-year-old daughter. And her question is about her daughter she's been caught smoking electronic cigarettes. Now, first of all, it's illegal for her to smoke electronic cigarettes because the tobacco 21, that means you have to be 21 years of age to smoke any kind of form of tobacco, including e-cigarettes. The same with drinking. No alcohol, right? The law of the land in America is 21. So she's like, what do I do? She's not being respectful. She's not listening. Well, there's a couple of things that this mom can do. And her daughter is mad at her not taking her calls, won't answer her texts. The couple things to do when your child chooses to do the wrong thing. If that thing is illegal, then you have to set your child down. Even if your child doesn't seem to want to listen, you have to say, I am not aiding and abetting an illegal activity. I am not going to allow you to consume alcohol, if that's the case, or drugs, or tobacco in my home. And if you catch her doing that, you have a choice. You can argue with her again, or you can simply lower the boom. Now, at 17, she's still in high school, so I'm sure she's dependent on you for a lot of things. Dependent on you for her phone, dependent on you for access to the family vehicle if she has her license. Those are the kind of things that you can take away until she shows that she's on a better path. The same thing with bad grades. I get a lot of questions about what if they're not studying? Well, there are outside ways to apply pressure in the hopes that the teen will choose to do the right thing. Now, you could take away her phone, you could take away her car keys, you could take away her life as she knows it, and she could still choose to sneak out and smoke. There is nothing you can do about that. You still do the right thing, and you pray that they'll choose to do the right thing as well. Now, for grades, somehow this makes us even crazier as parents, right? We want our kids to do well, but sometimes you just have to say, you know what? This is the path you're going on. If their counselor isn't telling them this, and most school counselors are pretty good, and they'll sit them down and say, hey, you know what? You're flunking out of these classes, or you're not doing enough work, so you're not going to get a high enough GPA, so you're not going to get probably into the college that you want to go to. Now, this isn't the end of the world. This is a good life lesson. Some kids, college just isn't for them. And if your child is bucking you about college, so I'm going a little off track from grades, but if your child is like not interested in college, say, fine, what's your plan? Because your plan, and I'd be very clear about this, your plan is not to sleep in my basement, play video games, and eat my food. You're not going to be a consumer. What is your plan? Are you going to get a job? Well, I'm going to get a job and work full-time. Great. If your child is working full-time and has a job right after high school, let that take care of his ambitions. He or she may decide that's what they want to do. Or they may spend a year or two in a job that's paying minimum wage, and they may decide that's what they like. And there's plenty of wonderful opportunities for kids who have a high school education, whether that's in the trades, electrician, plumber, that sort of thing. Or it may be just the emphasis they need to go to community college, or just decide to go to college themselves. Those are the kind of things. But sometimes we have to let that natural consequence kind of do that, help them with that. Another question that I get all the time is, what if the disrespect and the attitude they get from their teens? And believe me, I have 3 teenagers in my house at this time. I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes they're really mouthy, sometimes they're not. But again, this is the case. You have to pick your battles. You have to decide if your relationship with your teen is worth the battle. That doesn't mean that you allow them to talk to you in a way that is truly disrespectful. But so often we define disrespect as them not agreeing with what we're saying. And there is a certain amount of attitude we need to let go for our teens. I liken it to when we're having a bad day, we want everyone to give us some grace in our attitudes and the way that we're talking to them. And the same thing with our teens. Sometimes if they're having a bad day, I let their attitude go. And I might talk to them later when I see that they're calmed down. Oh, right. Let's, yeah, you were having a bad day. I know. You didn't really mean to say those kind of things to me. I know. Another thing that I think we forget is, with our teenagers, that can lead them to be disrespectful, is when we approach them with a problem or something we need to talk to them about. Are we paying attention to how we approach them? Or are we simply just going in there full guns blazing and not paying attention? For example, they get up first thing in the morning. Are we dumping everything they need to do that day on them before they've even had their eaten their breakfast? Yeah, they may have gotten up at 11 o'clock, but are we still just dumping all this on them? What about when they come home from school? Are you sitting there slapping that to-do list on their placemat and saying, do it right now? I think we need to pick when we talk to our teens a little more carefully as parents, and I think a lot of that disrespect will dissipate because we're being more careful in how we're selecting our time to chat with them about things that either need doing, and they need to correct, or that impact their family, our family, and they need to be a part of it. I learned early on not to tell my kids as soon as they walked in from school what they needed to do, give them 15-20 minutes to decompress. I also learned that sometimes if I had to tell them something and I knew it wasn't an optimum time, I would just say that, look, I know you have a lot in your mind and this is not the optimum time. However, I'm getting ready to walk out the door, so I've got to tell you this right now. And I find that when I prefaced it with something like that, they were much more amiable, much more willing to hear me without getting that snarky attitude. And sometimes just acknowledging to them, yeah, you know what? I realize this is a hard thing to ask you. I realize that you do not want to do this thing. Yeah, I get it, but this thing needs to be done, or you need to do this, or this is just sometimes just acknowledging that you get their frustration can really dial back that disrespect. And if that disrespect continues, a couple of things that could be helpful, because attitude and tone of voice is so hard to convey, I would record their conversation. Your conversation with her or him when they're being disrespectful, if you can, surreptitiously, and play it back for yourself and listen to your own tone of voice. So often our kids are reacting to how we're talking to them and we're not aware of it. So let's just start with us, because who's the only person you can change in this equation? Yourself. So a lot of the disrespect that comes, we can create it. We can add to it by our own attitude, and we can change that. For example, I didn't realize that I was talking to one of my kids and I had this angry tone to my voice because I was frustrated about something else. And he's like, "Are you mad at me, Mom?" And I was like, I actually wasn't mad, but the way I was talking to him sounded like I was mad. And I'm so glad he said that. This was years ago, and it's made me realize that my facial expression, the tone of my voice, that all contributes a lot. If I'm snippy with everyone in my family, they're snippy back. And sometimes I don't realize I'm being snippy, or I don't realize that I'm the one with the attitude. So let's take a pulse of ourselves, parents, especially with our teens, and see how we are the ones who maybe are being a little more aggressive, a little more attitude with that. Now, say you've done all that and it's really not you, it's them, right? What do you do then? I think you should just sit down with them and just have a series of talks with them. If you're Christians, I would bring scripture into it, even though they may not want to hear it. I would just say, you know what? Everyone deserves to have respect. So we're going to work on this together. I know sometimes I may not respect you in my tone of voice, so I want you to help me. We'll work on it together. Try that. Try to work with it. And if they're still not, you can do the lower the boom on them about their attitude. And you can, there's a lot of things, I think there's a lot of things that they like they like staying out late. They like being with their friends. They like having their device. They like having access to the phone. They like having access to your money. These are all things that you can use as leverage to help them reform their attitude. And you can help them. You can say, I find that what I call a responsibility chart, works really well. Your ideas on one side, the teen's ideas on the other. And you may be surprised, because there's going to be times when you notice, say it's every time you ask your teen to do something, she responds with a snarky, "Yeah, Mom, okay." And you can just say, I notice that this has become a habit for you to respond, and it's really not respectful. Now, what can we do together to help that not be a response? What are some things that you can do? What are some things that I could do? Collaborate. This is the part of that mentoring part. This is not you just dictating, this is what we're going to do. That's easier, but it also doesn't get the buy-in. This is helping them to think of how to solve that problem, do that problem solving. I find that try that, the responsibility chart. You put things on one side, they put them on the other, and you see what will work. And there are, and I'm going to close, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm going to close with this is the question from a parent, how do we keep from drowning in the pain we witness our children going through? And it's really hard to not wallow in that pain, watching our kids struggle. And this happens a lot with teenagers. They struggle and we feel that struggle. I think it helps reminding ourselves, this is not my life. I look at my teenage daughters, I look at my teenage son, I look at my just turned 12-year-old, and I think, though they have their life, I have mine. Yes, that hurts, and it does hurt us when our kids struggle, but when we can take that step back and realize that's their struggle, this is going to make them stronger. It's going to create in them that adult that we're going to want to be friends with. That season of friendship that comes when they've graduated college and they're on their own, and we can have that sweet friendship. That's what I'm looking forward to. And it forges them. These struggles are hard, but that's just what helps their character. It's like going through, like when you have to forge iron in the fire, or the gold in the fire, and all the dross is burned away. This is what these struggles do. When we look at them as opportunities for growth instead of ways that our kids are experiencing pain, that can really help us even approach them on that. Now, my oldest just got her license recently, and she has a new job, and she's 17, a rising senior, and she doesn't have a smartphone. That's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. And she drove. So we talked about the directions to her. We'd driven a couple times to this new place. It's a little bit further. So she called me in tears because she got lost. Got her straightened around. She got lost again. But you know what she said to me? And she finally made it there. And then the next day it was much easier. And you know what she said to me today as we were in the car coming back from blueberry picking? She said, Mom, she goes, I'm not afraid of getting lost anymore. I realize that I can get lost and it's going to be okay. And that I'm not afraid anymore. And I thought, this was a real struggle. It hurt my mom's heart to have my daughter sobbing on the other end of the phone, knowing there's nothing I can do because she's, miles away and I can't help her. I mean, I can't go to her to help her. I had to kind of guide her out of the situation. And she realized she didn't have to panic. She didn't panic. She pulled into a parking lot. She was upset because she was going to be late to work, her first day at her first job, this job. The woman was really understanding, so everything was okay at the job front. But she was very upset, and it was a struggle for me just to go, okay, here's how you're going to get out of it in the moment. But to hear later this almost wonder in her voice, she goes, now I don't have to be afraid. I'm not afraid about getting lost because I know that I can recover from that. And I thought, this is what we do. That we realize they struggle and there's pain, but we also realize there is something good that comes out on the other side of it. That there is something that we are helping them to realize that they have that resilience, that they have that growth. This is what we mean when we say, yes, we let our kids struggle, but they grow from it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this teen episode of Is This Normal? The teen years on You've Got This. And I hope that you join me next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhamaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.